There's no game that feels quite like Snake. You control a constantly moving line, the snake, in an enclosed grid. Your goal is to eat randomly spawning food. Every time you eat, your snake gets longer. If you run into a wall or your own body, the game is over. It's a classic, played countless times on countless machines ever since its inception in the 1976 arcade game Blockade. It's even the origin of the famous light cycle sequence in Tron. Snake is unique in how it handles its difficulty curve. It's expected for a game to get harder as it goes on, but for most games, this comes from the introduction of more challenging obstacles, stronger enemies, or increased speed. In Snake, the rising difficulty is internalized. Getting longer is your goal, but getting longer makes the game more difficult. There's more of your own body to run into. It creates a feedback loop of constantly rising tension. The only game I can think of with a similar dynamic is Katamari Damacy, and it's not a perfect match. In that game, you push a ball, the Katamari, which automatically picks up smaller items as you roll over them. The Katamari gets larger, which lets you pick up larger items, which makes the Katamari larger. There are times when having a large Katamari gets in the way, blocking off smaller paths, but after a certain point you're big enough that there's no real obstacles, just prey. Snake doesn't have that payoff, where your growth is no longer a problem. In fact, it has the opposite progression. You start a game of Snake moving easily and end up more and more constrained as it continues. Your only relief comes with defeat. Despite this, Snake doesn't feel frustrating. There's something hypnotic about the winding patterns you make running up and down the field. You put in all your focus, tensing up with every turn, a single mistake meaning death. It's a winning formula, and today I want to explore some games that build on it in interesting ways. I'd call these Snakelikes, but that would make talking about our first game difficult. Developed by Placate the Cat Productions, Snakelike is a turn-based roguelike, similar to NetHack, Caves of Cud, or, well, Rogue, but with a snake twist. I want to stress that Snakelike is still in early access. Judging from the Steam page, a big overhaul is coming soon. The footage and descriptions here may not be accurate in the near future. You play as a snake acolyte in the Order of the Serpent, undertaking a trial through a dungeon filled with monsters, traps, and most dangerous of all, dead ends. Snake and the classic roguelike have a good synergy with each other. They're both about dealing with confined areas. How many spaces away is the enemy? How many turns will it take to close in? How close am I to the exit? Are there traps in the way? In both games, the worst possible fate is to get cornered. Adding your own body to your spatial concerns feels natural. Roguelikes can be intimidating. They tend to have plenty of stats, equipment, and possible actions to keep track of. On the more extreme end, just look at the controls for NetHack. Snakelike is on the simplified side of things. The only controls are the arrow keys and the spacebar. It instead creates depth by tying multiple mechanics to snaking. Your body is your health. You grow when you eat and get shorter when damaged. Your body is your weapon. You do more damage to enemies when attacking from multiple sides, and instant kill if you completely surround them. Your body is your inventory. Each segment can only hold one item. The longer you are, the more items you can carry. Your body is your magic. Spells are performed by winding yourself into specific patterns. Your body is your currency. You trade segments for items at the shop. Having a long body is both a strength and a weakness. You have more health and resources, but it's harder to avoid damage and easier to get stuck. You can scan the area for dead ends with Snekolocation, which fills in your minimap, but it has limited charges. In Standard Snake, a mistake ends the game. Here, you have to play through your mistakes. If you get cornered, you have to chew off your own tail to make room. It's not a continuous build of tension, but an ebb and flow. You venture bravely when long and retreat when short. If Snake is about mindless consumption, then Snakelike lets you experience buyer's remorse. Developed by Orange Pixel, Snake Core isn't a roguelike, but it's roguelike inspired, similar to games like Slay the Spire and Dicey Dungeons. It's a series of procedurally generated challenges placed on a branching path. You play as an army of Space Marines straight out of Starship Troopers, taking the fight to an alien planet after an invasion. Each encounter is a game of Snake. Your Snake is a troop of soldiers running in single file. Your line increases when you pick up soldiers and scientists on the field. The hitch comes with the introduction of combat. Stages will often have enemy aliens. When you run toward them, your leading soldier and the enemy exchange fire. If your leader's health is depleted, the line gets one shorter. There's a good amount of variety in how it presents Snake. Regrouping missions are traditional Snake, picking up soldiers and dealing with your ever-growing line. Attack missions involve killing a certain number of enemies. Infection missions task you with clearing a spreading alien slime before time runs out. Hunting missions pit you against another alien snake. Bomb defusing missions have you clearing time bombs dropping on the field. Standard Snake tends to encourage a conservative playstyle. You try to condense the Snake, moving back and forth to leave open space. By having multiple objectives, Snake Core introduces prioritization. Soldiers left on the field will be attacked, so you have to pick them up quickly. Multiple enemies mean more complex routing. Time limits discourage waiting for safe movement. The entire game is built around risk. You start your campaign with 80 soldiers and send a portion of them into each battle. If you succeed, you move forward on the map with extra soldiers added to your arsenal. If you fail, you're sent back with a number of soldiers subtracted. If you reach 0, it's game over. It's a battle of attrition, where life is cheap and replaceable. Your commanding officer shows a contempt for the scientists you rely on and the soldiers under your command. The combat system implies the soldiers have fully bought into this dynamic, gleefully running straight into enemy fire. The machismo of the setting runs straight into the frailty of your characters. They act invincible, but they disintegrate when they bump into a wall. The game is a bit simple compared to similarly structured titles. There's no different starting builds, only one boss, and the upgrade system is limited, but it makes good use with what it has. Developed by Nomenon Games, Snakebird is Snake turned into a puzzle game. I admit, I'm not great at this kind of game. Given that, some of the footage on display here is not from Snakebird proper, but Snakebird Primer, the pseudo-sequel that has easier puzzles. And even there I got stumped a few times. Take that as you will. If you think about it, snakes and birds are practically opposite animals. One has several limbs, the other has none. One is completely groundbound, the other takes to the skies. The concept of a snakebird is awkward, and the game is entirely about that awkwardness. The goal of each level is to collect all pieces of fruit, if there are any, and to reach the portal at the end. Eating a piece of fruit makes your snakebird extend. Unlike most of these games, which are played from a top-down perspective, Snakebird is played from a side view. This introduces the curse of gravity. You still move on a grid, but you're constantly pulled downward, and need to wrap around cliff edges to pull yourself up. The puzzles tend to come in two forms. One is the classic snake dilemma. You want to get all the fruit, but in the process you trap yourself. The second is what I'll call the bird's dilemma. Levels will ask players to cross long vertical gaps or horizontal climbs, obstacles which would be simple if you could fly, but seem impossible with your weird floppy body. Some levels make use of both problems, and each type requires careful forethought when moving. The game introduces new mechanics as it goes on, such as multiple snakebirds, pushable blocks, and teleporters. But the core mechanics, how you maneuver each bird, never changes. Like any good puzzle game, it feels like everything is connected. The answer to previous puzzles clue you in on how to solve later puzzles, and vice versa. Or at least, that's what I assume. Like I said, bad at puzzles. Developed by Stovetop LLC, Snakeybus is the closest game to Standard Snake on this list. It's a mix between Snake and Crazy Taxi. Both games are about playing as reckless transportation drivers, rushing passengers to destinations and only sometimes using roads. Compared to taxis, the Snakeybus has a much higher carrying capacity. By that, I mean it's theoretically infinite. Once you drop off passengers, your bus extends, becoming a train of linked buses. The more passengers you drop off at once, the longer your bus extends. The more your bus extends, the more passengers it can carry. The biggest tonal difference between Crazy Taxi and Snakeybus can be found in the soundtrack. Crazy Taxi was filled with loud and energetic tracks from The Offspring and Bad Religion, reflecting its pulse-pounding, mile-a-minute gameplay. Snakeybus, by contrast, has a soundtrack ripped straight from lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to. This laid-back atmosphere characterizes the whole game. There is a time attack mode, where you refill a ticking timer with passenger stops, but that's not the default mode. In classic mode, there is no time limit. The only requirement is that you keep moving. The game is pretty forgiving when it comes to movement. You have a limited boost jump, so there's an out if you corner yourself. That jump becomes an arcing path that all preceding segments follow, which you can drive under. It makes the vehicle seem weightless. There's something balletic and graceful about watching your movement path intertwine with itself. Even if you mess up, restarting is a single button press away. It feels directly at odds with the building tension of Snake. The devs acknowledge the simple joy of moving your Snakeybus with Endless Mode, which takes place on a picturesque mountain range. There's no passengers, no deadlines, no limits on your boost, and your bus automatically extends over time. All you need to do is grow and explore. The developers aren't aiming for pulse-pounding excitement, but a focused sense of flow. They provide just enough challenge to keep you engaged, and just enough leeway to keep you relaxed. Developed by Wood Penguin, It's Our Revolution has the dual honors of being both my favorite game on this list and the only game without Snake in its title. These two facts are not related. Probably. It's a mix between Snake and a JRPG. It's also one of the funniest games I've ever played. When people say, this video game is funny, what they often mean is, this video game has well-written jokes. Plenty of funny things can happen in a game like, say, Minecraft, but people wouldn't call Minecraft inherently funny. That's not the case here. It's Our Revolution has very little writing in it at all. Instead, it presents us with a ridiculous premise and lets us play through all its implications. I knew I was in for something special when I was marching a platoon of children and the elderly to break someone out of jail. So what is the premise? You're a humble farmer in a nondescript fantasy world, and the king has been unreasonably hiking taxes. You petition him, pleading that people will starve, but he brushes you off. Disappointed, but not deterred, our nameless protagonist decides that he will try again, this time gathering a group. There's only one problem. It's kind of hard to get everyone there. If you talk to an NPC, they'll join your party. Like many JRPGs, your party follows single file behind you. Unlike most RPGs, you can't walk through them. You have to carefully snake around the world, trying not to corner yourself. That world is unexpectedly large. At first glance, I expected the game to be only a single town. For a simple freeware game made with stock RPG Maker assets, that would have been perfectly acceptable. But it's not, far from it. It has an overworld, with multiple towns and dungeons. According to the translator, VG Person, the game contains 999 recruitable NPCs. It even includes a rudimentary battle system, where each NPC type has different stats and attacks. Once you realize the scope of the game, the scope of your ambition changes with it. I mentioned that the game had dungeons and combat, but why are you dungeon diving in the first place? You're not a hero. You're not out to save the world. You just don't want to pay taxes. Well, you're asking the dungeon bosses for help. If you defeat them, you can recruit them and the monsters in their domain. It's Our Revolution is a fairly open-ended game, and the win condition is similarly open. The moment you think you have enough people, you can head back to the starting town, talk to the king, and get an ending. But most players don't stop at that arbitrary point. Once you realize there are multiple towns, you want to scour them all. Once you realize there are dungeons, you want to conquer each one. Once you start destroying things to clear the way for your massive party, you realize you have a problem. For a game with very little story, there's a subtle satire going on here. It's about a social movement that loses its way, putting the cart before the horse. It's no longer about any goal they want to achieve, just about becoming the biggest and most powerful. It's about maintaining the party line, by any means necessary. The problem with Snake is that it's a fundamentally futile game. The snake desires infinite growth, but is trapped in a finite world. Their failure isn't an error, something that can be corrected with enough skill. It's destiny. Even if you play perfectly, you'll run out of space. The snake is forced to eat its own tail. Snake is a game about greed, and its children inherit that original sin. They're all about growing incorrectly or thoughtlessly, about biting off more than you can chew and ending up with nothing. But these games also learned forgiveness, giving you more options and the ability to try again. Snakeybus may cling to its parents' tail-eating ways, but it's much more relaxed about it. Every other game here has a win condition, a point where you can stop and say, okay, that's enough. Thank you all for watching. Are you interested in any of the games I showcased here? Do you know of any interesting snake games that I didn't cover? Any suggestions for types of games I should cover next? Leave your answer in the comments below. Like and subscribe so the YouTube Mafia doesn't break my kneecaps. This is Elseif Games, signing off.